Hi. Sorry, I was slightly delayed.
It's okay. Hi. Good morning.
I have this class at Flame in the mornings. So today there was a bit of rush on the way back. I think everyone's traveling for Diwali, so the highway was packed. So it took a little longer than usual. Okay. Um, so today we are starting the new month. We are going to be doing different kinds of materials. I have shared some images of water in glasses and glass. So today's topic is actually transparent materials. Now, Geeta, since it's your first class today, I'm just going to give you an exercise for you to do separately. And
Okay.
just so that you don't need to jump into drawing glassware immediately. It can be a little intimidating. So
Yeah.
I'm going to do a little exercise called pencil yoga, which is for everyone. And those who've not done this before, you can also do the same exercise. And this exercise helps you to just free up your hand. Since we are
Control.
since we're going to do pencil sketching today primarily, this will work to make everyone comfortable with moving your hand in different directions. So we'll spend the first 10-15 minutes in just doing this exercise. Everyone can join in because as much as I prescribe it to everyone, like learning multiplication tables, I know I have not done it. And I suspect nobody does the pencil yoga as much as they should be doing. So this is going to be a little refresher for everyone. So we are going to start off with keeping our books in front of us and sit right in front of your book so that your shoulders are parallel to the book. The book and your posture does not change. Normally, when we draw or write, we will turn our book to one side and then write. This is our normal hold. When we draw otherwise as well, we keep rotating the book around to draw any line that we want to in the most convenient direction and orientation of the book. But for today's exercise, we are going to exercise the hand and the wrist and the pressure that we put on paper. When we write with a pencil, we are making very short lines. So we often will be just making small movement. Our fingers are moving in very micro increments. But when we draw, maybe only 10 or 15% of the time we make such micro lines. Most of the time we are drawing large items. And our hand is just not practiced. We don't have the kind of mobility and strength and control on the muscles to be able to draw those lines. So this exercise is intended to build that strength and control in your muscles so that you become comfortable with drawing long span lines in different shapes. So we are going to observe how our hand moves, and we're going to allow it to move in different ways as we go through the page. That's why keeping the book in one orientation and not moving it is very critical. So I'm going to show you a series of lines which you will make at your pace. I'll go through the entire structure first, but you will make these lines at your pace. If somebody is going this fast, if you want, you can go this slow. And I will also explain the intent of each of those exercises as I explain that to you. So the sequence of lines to be drawn is very simple, straightforward. We are going to be making a set of vertical lines going from top to bottom. I just want you to observe this first. I'm going to do this whole thing with you. You don't need to write this down. Just observe and understand. And then we start doing it. You'll have some questions. Freely ask me those questions. I'll help you out. So we are going to make vertical lines from top to bottom and bottom to top. I'm not going to prescribe how you should hold your pencil. You can hold your pencil like your normal hold is when we write, or you can change the grip, or you can hold it really far, or you can hold it up in the air. You can do whatever you want, and you can keep changing that as well. So vertical, up and down, horizontal, left to right, and right to left. And then we have the 4 diagonals. So we go from top left to bottom right, bottom right to top left. And then, of course, bottom left to top right, and top right to bottom left. And we do each of these in that sequence. So you'll first make all the verticals in one direction across the page. And then you will make the verticals in the other direction. So you're not going to alternate the lines, one direction at a time. After all these are done, we are going to make circles. So we are going to make a series of circles. So it's just like one spiral that's compressed into itself to form a circle in at least 3 sizes. A large size, now large is subjective, you can make it a whole page or maybe half a page, but definitely more than you're used to. Then a medium, and then a small. So here different parts of your hand are used. For the large circle, the whole wrist will be used. For the medium and the small parts of your fingers will be used. We will make them in anti-clockwise direction as well as clockwise direction. And all of this is done on the whole page itself. So you don't need a different page for each of these exercises. So we have lines, circles, and then we have 2 exercises, which would be making a spiral shape like that, which is reducing and also has a direction. So this is anti-clockwise, and you do something similar clockwise. And you also can do something that is increasing in its girth and also in 2 directions. So here we have clockwise. So this is one. And the other one is what's called a herringbone pattern. One of the most common, or let's say, these are the 3 common obtuse shapes. One is just a line, one is a circle, and the other is called a compound curve. So a compound curve is a line that moves in 2 directions. You have 2 separate radii of a circle, and you catch 2 arcs in those 2 circles. So this is a compound curve. This is different from a curved line. We are not making curved lines. We are just focusing on an elegant compound curve. And we practice this in 2 ways. One is, again, you're not moving the book through all of this. You start off a compound curve and you loop back. And here you do it slowly enough to control the line so that you get these distances equal. What we don't want is to just scribble through. Speed means nothing in art. Go very slowly. So this is what we want. This is what we want to avoid. Here's the horizontal herringbone, and then you can have the vertical herringbone. So we are looking, in these 2, we are looking at consistency. Only in these 2. The others, you don't have to worry. You can make your spiral even like that. You don't have to worry about keeping this equidistant. You don't have to make the circles such that these distances are equal. None of that. You just have to focus on your wrist and your hand moving freely. Okay, I'm going to make a screenshot of this page so that you don't have to worry about what comes next. And I'll share it on the group so that you can refer to this picture.
So Aditi, do we fill the page with lines, vertical and lines and horizontal lines, everything on the same page?
Yes, yes.
So, but then the whole page will be filled with lines, then it'll have horizontal lines, then it'll have circles, everything will be all on one.
Yes, yes.
So it'll be a one big, like a jigsaw jumble page.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, okay.
So eventually, barring the herringbone, you can do this whole exercise on a newspaper. You don't need to use a clean sheet of paper for this because it really doesn't matter how your lines look. So let's begin now. You'll see why I'm saying that. When you are trying to make, when you're making these lines over here without focusing on the quality of the line, you are focusing on your hand and your muscles.
Yeah.
So while I'm making these lines, they may start off straight. Sometimes they all go in one direction. It does not matter. We are not trying to control the line. We are just using this line to observe how our hand moves. On the left, my hand moves quite comfortably. As I come to the center, suddenly I have to pull my elbow in because I'm sitting funnily in front of the paper. I can't do anything else. And you start seeing a wobble. But in this process, you start making your hand do things that it probably has not done before. That is the intent. Okay?
Okay.
All right, let's begin. Once you finish all your top to bottom, then you can start bottom to top. Just keep checking before you start every line that just accidentally you've not shifted the book and made it more convenient for you to draw. Now, while you're drawing these lines also, I want you to check if you're holding your breath. If you're biting your lip, if there is tension in your shoulders, you need to relax. You don't need to make these lines exactly equidistant or between each other. It's just convenient that there is space somewhere in between so you can make the line. Some of these lines you will never need to draw. Like this bottom to top line is almost never required. The bottom right to top left is often never required by right-handed people and vice versa. After the verticals are done, let's draw horizontal. In the horizontal line, your grip will change as you move from the left to right also. So it will start off holding the pencil horizontal, and then maybe it will go straighter, just so that you can accommodate the line without too much discomfort. You can also pull it sideways. So this exercise just helps you to see how many different ways you can hold your drawing tool. One of the big differences that I found in my teaching between artists and non-artists is literally the grip of the pencil. The place where you hold the pencil, the pressure you use to draw, and one more thing. Yeah, the fact that you can change the grip depending upon what line you want to make. That's almost like a revelation. At some point, students say, okay, it's okay for me to hold the pencil a little far away for this line, which seems, why it seems like it's a revelation is because when we've used the pencil in the past, it's only been for writing, and our movement is, our hold is pretty static and standard. You don't really need to change that. At best, people who write choking the pencil, holding it right at where the graphite starts, they are maybe asked to hold the pencil a little further, but beyond that, you can keep doing the same. Okay, now we have the diagonals. Here you will notice that some directions are very easy. They come very naturally. While you're drawing, also try to reduce pressure, increase pressure, see how those lines look. What if you make just a light wispy line? How does that look? This exercise is going to help everyone, even those of you who are going to do the pencil sketch of the glass later. This little warm up is really going to help you. Okay, now all the straight lines are done. Now hold your pencil a little far away, maybe about 2 inches from the tip, and make a circle in an anti-clockwise direction. So we make multiple lines. We keep going over and over in what seems like one rut. And somewhere over here, if you do like an averaging out of all the lines, there will be a perfect circle. There should be a perfect circle. Now, if you have some kind of, if you've never drawn before, you don't even have to have some kind of condition. There's a chance that you're drawing a circle that goes round in one place and then comes straight up. So here's where you slowly and consciously change the shape of that circle. Do it slowly. In the beginning, it has to be done very consciously. So at least you know what should be the right direction. And that's why we make these multiple lines. And then you have a small circle. Now the other direction. Large circle clockwise, medium circle clockwise, and small circle clockwise. Now let's try the spiral tornadoes. Start off a nice big shape and then start bringing it down and reducing the width of the line. Before you move on to the next, just make an arrow in the corner so you know which direction you have done it. It becomes very confusing afterwards. There's no way of telling how you drew this. And then you can draw the same thing in the same direction, but going from small to big. So your hand continues to move in that same circle. Now let's make it clockwise. And clockwise, small to big. Now you see how this will become a better exercise if you do it on a newspaper rather than clean paper like that. There's really no point in doing it on fresh paper. The next exercise, however, you should do on fresh paper or scraps of paper. I encourage recycling. You can do this exercise on newspaper as well, but maybe use a ballpoint pen or something for that. Now, again, we are going to keep the book immobile in front of us such that we are sitting parallel to the book. And in this case, now you can draw two lines just so that you get some guidance about the extent of your compound curve. The distance between the lines is about 4 fingers or so. You don't want to make them too wide. Again, based on how you're sitting, you might be very tempted to do this, but don't do it right now. And start with a simple compound curve. So you get your first line, roll over and come slightly lower than the point on the right. And then roll back up. And you will get a pace. You just need to take the line above to a distance where it matches the distance that you've already created between the second and its previous line. So you keep an eye on the line just above the line that you have to match. As you can see, I keep going out of my boundary on the right. A little bit is fine. If you find yourself feeling stressed, just give a long exhalation. Any kind of precision work often stresses up the mind. That's another thing that we need to work on. If you hold your breath when you're making these lines, there will be a shiver, and we want to avoid that. All right, next one. Goes without saying that we can, for this spiral, we can start from anywhere. It's pretty much going to be the same. Huh? This one is not clockwise or anti-clockwise or left or right because it goes in all directions. What you could do is go from bottom to top. That is the other thing you can do. And here we can do an S curve and then follow through. So one way to keep this going steady is to not move your hands and just move your, not move your fingers, just move your hand. Keep your wrist very tight. And here there's a very interesting exercise which we do in the calligraphy class is to put some pressure coming down and no pressure going up, and you get a very interesting design. Okay, all good? Okay, now Geeta,
Yeah,
are you comfortable with all of this?
kind of.
Okay.
If you see my my drawing, you'll be quite surprised.
That's okay, not a problem. So what I want you to do now is I want you to control or play along with the pressure control of your pencil. So now
Okay.
we've got a lot of different shapes made over here. I
Mhm.
want you to only shade in these
Mhm.
shapes. So select any one section, select a small part of this and shade it in as many tones as you can.
Okay.
It becomes like a mid-tone,
Okay.
medium tone. And then I can select another one and just barely touch the pencil so that I can get a very light tone. And then at some point I can really press hard and get the darkest tone of my pencil.
Okay.
Okay, so I just want you to fill in a few places over here. So I want you to feel comfortable with the pencil before we move on further. All right.
Okay. Okay.
At any point, if you feel you want to join in and draw the transparent glass, feel free to do that. I don't want to assume that you have any less ability. I just don't want you to be scared away. That's all.
Don't worry, I won't be.
Okay. All right. So,
Can I sharpen the pencil before we do the glass?
yes, we'll sharpen the
Pretty
pencil.
much gone.
Yeah, let me just share the images and speak about this a little bit.
Can I use a 4B today instead of the 2B?
No, don't use a 4B. No.
Okay.
4B is like walking with roller skates on. You will just, I mean, you don't want to do that unless you're confident. Putting a toddler on rollerblades. So today's exercise is the reason why we're doing it in pencil is because it's monochrome, it's only grays, and you can achieve a lot with pencil sketching of transparent objects, especially glass and water. And with watercolor, it can get a little tricky. So we'll use watercolor with some other materials, which are better for watercolor. So now a glass of water or transparency is something that is almost considered as like the toughest thing an artist can do. And I have been put in this position several times by my well-wishing friends saying, let's see how good you are and show us how to draw a glass of water. When they used to do this to me in my 30s, I was a little scared and I thought, oh, how am I going to do this? How can I prove to them? But this is like there's a trick in this. It's almost like magic. A transparency is transparent. When they say draw transparency, you're actually not drawing transparency. So you really don't have to draw anything. It's like saying, show me how to draw air. It's a transparent medium. You have to say, okay, if you want me to show you how to draw air, tell me, where is this air? I will draw that air. So is it an indoor air or outdoor air? So I will draw an outdoor setting and say, okay, you see the trees, but it's actually the air that I have drawn. So there's a trick in that. So what you will see now are several images of objects which are transparent, holding a transparent liquid. But you will not see the object for its shades. All you see are different tones in different shapes at strategic locations that make it appear as if it's a glass or it's water or it's a particular shape of container. So when I show you the images, I want you to try to not see it as a glass of water, but to see it for the shapes it makes with the grays and the blacks that surround it. So if we flatten this image out, and if I were to give you just shapes to look at, this is what you will actually see. We see an oval, yeah? Then we see parts of an oval somewhere here. So there's two overlapping ovals. And below this, we see some kind of a curve. Oh, I don't know if this is just a line. Sorry, I need to draw a... No, I don't know what's happening here. Oh, got it. The settings have changed. I'm still becoming familiar with this. So there's a curve here. So there's part of another oval over here. And then we have two lines. One line on this side and one line on this side. In terms of shapes of, or the shape of a line, this is all there is to it, right? Two lines, two ovals, and three curves. One curve below it. They are at a specific distance, and between them, there are some very weird shades. So we just need to replicate the shades in those positions, and it will look like this object, which just happens to be a transparent glass with transparent liquid in it. Okay, so this was one. Let me just clear up everything. And now let's see something else. Okay, so here we have just one oval on top, a wobbly line on two sides, and maybe some three lines at the bottom for the base. Moving on. Again, one, two ovals, two vertical lines, and a curve at the bottom with shapes. It's all exactly the same thing. Here, it's even simpler because you have one oval on top, which is just a ring, one oval in the middle, which is shaded mostly, and one oval at the bottom, instead of just the curved line. But the sides are, instead of being straight, they are curved. And if we if we translate this color into gray, so that we can accommodate the highlight, you just have almost one uniform gray throughout. On the right, then, you will see there's a little bit of shadow, an extra shadow, only because it is right next to a highlight. Now, this image has more things happening just because there is a black background. The shape is not oval, it's an octagon, and the bottom is again not straight. So the shape of the water also changes because it's a flattened octagon. But if you move from the first few images that we've seen and come to this, it is not difficult to see these. Now we just have to figure out how to draw these. And if you can draw a line, you can draw this as well. So today we are not going to go into hexagonal glasses. We will draw this glass. Okay, and if we have enough time, we will attempt the other items. Once you draw the glass of water, you will be able to do this all by yourselves. Okay, so let me go over this one more time so you know what to draw. Those of you who are comfortable and want to start can begin. So here,
Last week.
sorry?
Jasmine and I did this class last week.
Yeah, so then I was just about to say that.
Another one?
No, you can attempt the other one then. Wait. Why don't you try making this glass instead? Okay, Jasmine, you okay with this? Shivani?
I did
can
this
do it.
glass.
Jasmine did
You
it
did this
last
glass?
week.
All right, then choose the one that you want to make. Do you want to make the
The-
bottle
I'll do
instead?
this one. And yeah, this is fine. I'll do this one.
Yeah, you can do any other object because you've gone through this exercise once before. You can do another one and I will help you to tweak that part. Okay? All right. So going back to this class. Okay, so here now when we are drawing, I want you to observe what I'm looking at. I will be drawing a shape and then I will be checking with my reference image whether I'm getting the right size. Now with right proportion. With ovals, the problem is that when we're drawing, we might often make an oval that is slightly flat, and then we have to keep making adjustments. So then after careful observation, you might have to change the size of the oval so that it matches the proportions of the given image. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do this. Okay, one important instruction is for today's exercise, please keep an eraser handy. So relief. But if you catch yourself using the eraser unnecessarily, which means that you erase a line and draw a line on the same line that you've erased, then that means you're still using it as a crutch. The better technique is if you feel the need for an eraser, first make the line that you feel is correct and then erase the line that is interfering with that correct line. That is a better process to go by. All right. So here's how we begin. Start off somewhere in the middle. Don't start in the corner because you never know how your illustration is going to spread out. So maybe 3 or 4 fingers away from the edge. Start with an oval that you think you see. Often what we see with our heads and what we see with our eyes are two completely different things. Our brain is trying to give us succinct information of the world around us, and that often does not really have accurate details. So you have to keep checking this when we do art. In my mind's eye, my glass looks like this and like this. And if you are not looking at your reference image, there's a chance that you will make a glass that looks like this. All this is fine. And then you have a slightly flatter bottom. If this happens to any of you, please tell me, then I'll explain this part. But till then, with every line you draw, look at the reference image. I'm looking at the reference image on the screen. So I see my drawing and the reference image next to each other, but on the screen. If when you're drawing your own images, keep your reference image next to your drawing so that you can quickly check if the shapes are identical. In my case now, I can tell that the bottom curve needs to be rounder. And so does the curve on top. And it almost seems unnatural to make such a round oval. This line is pretty much like how we did our circles. You keep going over and over till you get the right shape in the right proportion. Now, we don't know if this is the right proportion until we erase the lines which are incorrect. So this is the point where you use an eraser. If you have a flexible eraser, even if you don't have a flexible eraser, please avoid abrasing the paper. Press your eraser onto the graphite and it'll be picked up. Now, when you're drawing the lines on the side, if you feel the need to, first make a center line. So you know that you have equal space on either side. And then keeping this as the center of a clock face, look at where this line is pointing. And you'll get your answer. This is 6 o'clock. Somewhere over here would be 5 o'clock. And you can discern whether your line is closer to 5 o'clock, closer to 6 o'clock, and check if that angle looks more or less right. And then make the bottom. Many of these lines will change as we start shading. Now we had seen that we have an overlapping oval for the water. And you don't really see the water over here, but you see it in some shapes on the glass. And then you have some shapes over here. The bottom, you have almost a straight line. Now, where does this line come? You can use the earlier shapes to gauge what is the distance between the edge of the water in the foreground and the dark shape that we see is probably the back of the base of the glass. Somewhere over here, where we have a straight line and curved on the edges. Now, this is extremely counterintuitive. You would never make a line that is straight in this illustration, but it's there. And then there's a crescent shape. And here now looks like I've made my glass shorter. It can become slightly longer. And I can make this long length of the glass, I can manipulate it as I start shading. So till the very end, all the lines that you draw in an illustration are only tentative guesses. They are like scaffolding of a building. Until the entire building is done, you don't remove the scaffolding. Now, when we are shading this, let us start with shading the section that you can clearly see, and you are sure that that is the place that shading has to be. So I am fairly certain about the maybe the bottom we can start. I can see this line. There's a white line separating the dark shadow over here, the crescent shaped dark shadow, and the base. And I can see the base pretty well also. So I'm going to start at this separation because I'm fairly confident that the distances are good. And I'm going to start with mid-tones first. So you can mark out an area like this. I have this as my shape, more or less shape. Huh? As I go to the right, it becomes flat again and then goes to the edge. So at this point, remove everything else from your vision and focus on just this shape. There seems to be some kind of a cut in the shadow at this point, and around it is all dark. Don't go and shade it dark right away. Just make it a mid-tone. A mid-tone is, as it says, slightly deeper than a light tone and slightly less dark than a dark tone. That's pretty self-evident. Sometimes if you've watched any YouTube videos, you will see, especially international artists, throwing a lot of terms, and that can be very confusing or intimidating. But sometimes sophisticated terminology helps. But sometimes it just gets in the way of learning. Okay, are you able to see this shape? Because I've drawn it since I see it, but I want you to know, I want to know if everyone is seeing the same thing. All right, now before we move any further, this is a good time to bring in a guard sheet. So guard sheet is just a rough sheet that you can keep your hand on so that you don't smudge your drawings. And also another thing, now you can move your book. Huh? I forgot to change that setting. You don't need to keep your book in one orientation anymore. So move your eye from one section to the next. And as far as possible, don't jump from one section to a further section. Move to within the neighborhood. Some proportions might change, some placement might change. Just roll with it. Don't try to make it too perfect. The shapes that we see in this class are also fairly arbitrary, I would say. It's not as if these particular shapes are making the transparency of the object more convincing or anything like that. So if this white line that I've drawn as a scroll, negative scroll, if it were a little higher or lower or a little fatter or thinner, it won't really make so much of a difference. So even if we get up to maybe 75% of these shapes in the right place, in the right tones, I think we should be able to see a transparent object here. Now it's important to shade also in the direction that is most conducive to create these shapes. Avoid shading vertical lines here. Move your pencil horizontally or in contour, because there are hardly any vertical lines here. If there had been a vertical highlight, it would still make sense. But since there aren't any, we would just be, those lines will also create a confusing narrative. So in this sense, art is no different than magic. We are also just creating an illusion. When drawing glasses, I would advise you to draw something like these, or you can also try a whiskey glass. I have some references of whiskey glasses I'll share with you. The glasses to avoid at all costs is wine glasses, because they are a nightmare to draw, and as beautiful as they look holding wine in a social setting, they are horrible in illustrations. The proportions just don't work for any illustration. Even if you're doing food illustration and you want to put a glass of wine, avoid it. I have yet to see an illustration of on food where the wine glass actually adds to the beauty of the illustration. I have my theories why, but I've just stopped that now. I'll find some other graphic. So now I have finished most of my midtones. It still doesn't look like a transparent glass. It just looks like some scribbling. So these are the points where I found many people start judging and saying this is looking nothing like what it should look like, so I'm going to abandon the picture. So a short way that this picture is going to continue to look like it's looking like nothing, because it is nothing. A glass looks like a glass because it's got a rim, because it's got walls, not just because you see part of it. So avoid judging and focus on the number of shades you can create in the right place. And there will be very nuanced shades. Close to each other, there will be some light and dark stripes sometimes. Try to get all that down as accurately as you can. So this requires you to move your eye in small increments as you proceed. Another thing to avoid is blowing up the picture. Don't increase, don't magnify at this stage. Magnification can be done at a later stage. Right now, if you magnify, you will almost 100% change the proportions of the glass, because all your reference points have changed. Once you're more or less done with the bottom, there could be more, we'll come back to this. Move to the next section. It's going to be a little shallower. And the sides look like it's a rounder circle, but they don't touch the edge. So we start seeing white spaces here in water. And a little bit of that refracted image is now becoming apparent. The foreground edge will be seen differently, and the main picture of the water is seen differently. And now here we have three separate shapes. We have what looks like one crescent shape like that, a C shape, and then another one below it. And then there's a white patch, which is blank. And then there is another little C shape here on the left. This starts looking like water. So this is all the refracted shadows of the base that we see on top. So we are still not seeing water. We are seeing the shadows created within the glass, which are seen from the top. And we follow the same process. Okay, Jasmine, can I see what you've drawn? Do you need help?
I mean, I can show you what I've done. I
Yes.
did this one,
Okay.
this glass.
Okay, looking good. All right. 1 second. Let me just look at the glass itself. Okay. Okay, getting there.
Okay. Yeah.
So don't make very deep very dark shadows right now.
Okay.
Okay, block up all the grays first and then move in with the dark shadows because some of your shapes will change.
Okay.
Okay. Shivani, how are you doing? You're making the other glass? Geeta, how are you doing? Would you like to try your hand at the glass also?
Yeah, I am. I am.
Good. Drawing these curves can be rather painful. Huh? At least that was how I used to think of them earlier. So I would recommend breaking the curve up and just drawing bits and pieces of it, especially because now when we draw the rim of the glass, we are going to be drawing two or parts of two rims or two ovals to create the rim. So if you're at that point, just focus on the part that you need to make that and move forward. A few tips for the newcomers. When you're shading, if you notice that there are some white patches in the paper, just a few white sections because the lead is not embedded properly in those areas, instead of going over the whole section again, I recommend just going and filling in those areas with the lightest pressure you can. If you go over the whole area, there's a danger of making it too dark. Now, over here, it is dark, so it really won't matter. I can shade in one direction like this, and then increase pressure and shade in another direction just for the darkness, and I should get it. But when it comes to a space like this, just go to the parts where the lead has not been embedded and fill in the blanks. That's it. There are some very interesting highlights here. Almost like there's the water is reflecting the lights under which it is being photographed. So you can demarcate those lines and then start shading around them. With reflections, this is the amazing bit. You can't hide the truth. So often when we used to do product photography with shiny items, we had to make sure that the photographer was well hidden so that the photographer's reflection is not seen in the image. And all the other items also, we could not have a messy studio because all of that would reflect. So suddenly there would be like a red fabric that would reflect, and it was all very funny. And you saw this, you often did not see this on the camera while you were shooting. But when we process the images in the studio later, you could then see the images in detail, and that's when all these things would emerge. And then we would have to sit and Photoshop all those out. I wonder whether this has been used in I'm sure this has been used in a plot for a movie. A photograph being shot, and either the killer or somebody who knows about it, his picture emerges somewhere in the reflection. This sounds extremely familiar? Okay, now notice a few things over here. There's a very thin sliver of white just above this edge. And it has a very sharp edge along the mid-tones. So the curve comes right up to the top, and then there's a gentle shadow that goes inside, leaving a small sliver of reflection or highlight at this edge. These things are very important. Try to keep those in place. Now, one of the devices I recently found was this eraser. There's an electronic eraser also like that, but I would hate to use an eraser which uses batteries. So this eraser is pretty hard, and it has a very thin tip. So you can use the,
It has a
go on.
of pencil.
Sorry?
It's got a rim, so it kind of takes off a line of pencil, right?
Yeah.
And creates, wow.
So
See,
you can,
another thing to buy.
I know this one I bought maybe 2 months ago, and then I had lost it. Then I found it very safely kept. So for this session, I could use it. So this helps to just remove that little bit so that you can correct. And also it helps to create very sharp highlights where you need them.
That's what I'm struggling with.
I can recommend.
Because this rolled up, whatever, what is it called? These flexible eraser.
Yeah.
I have to make it into a small point to take off, some of the pencil marks.
Yes, and because it is flexible, it is not it's not as hard and doesn't have a sharp edge.
Yeah.
You can't even make a
Yeah.
sharp edge.
Yeah, so you take off more than necessary and go back to coloring.
Correct.
Even
So
DOMS has come out with a
What comes out?
DOMS. You can just adjust it. But it's a
No,
little
I didn't
thicker.
understand that.
It's an eraser by DOMS.
Oh, well, acha, okay.
Tom's is a
That's
brand.
a firm.
Yeah.
Ah, right.
Now, by this time, you will come to points where the lines or the intersections between two tones may not be a sharp line. So here's how you can draw a fuzzy line. I can draw, say, a circle, and I could blend it and create a fuzzy edge around it. So this looks like it's an out of focus fuzzy line, but there is no controlling this. You could also use a blending stump, which I generally avoid using because it just makes everything too flat. And this can give you a nice smooth outline as well. But without using a blending stump, how to create a blurred edge? Start off with making a shading with a very light hand. And then darkening from the center. And as you come to the edge of that dark patch, reduce the pressure. So automatically it starts looking like an out of focus shadow. Okay, so I think now everyone will be able to do the shading of the water and the glass. I wanted to show you the shading of the rim and a little bit of the shadow. So let's do that first, and then you can continue because by that time our time will be up. We'll carry on till about 12:40 since we started 10 minutes late. So the rim is not two concentric ovals. This is not how the rim looks. What you see are parts of those ovals highlight. So if you look at the sides, you have a C shape from the outside, the outer edge of the glass, coming till about here. And this shape also extends up to the inside edge of the glass. Right? But when it comes towards the bottom, it comes and curves to touch the inside rim of the glass, not the outside, not the middle. So be careful to see this. Is it the outside or the inside? We have an inside part of the glass and we have an outside part of the glass. And each of these shadows touches a different part of the rim. Here again, from outside to inside and outside with a little reflection in the center. Over here. And then this part of the line goes to the outside. See, already it started looking like a glass. And then you have the inside part only over here. You might think that you need to furnish details about the edge on the inside of the sides of the glass, but you don't. This is just something that your brain will trick you into thinking that if you don't give it, it will not look like a complete rim, but don't fall for that. Yeah. So the edge of the glass is not visible, don't draw it. The inner edge comes very close to this side. That's it. Don't draw anything more. There's no inside edge of the foreground. Don't draw it. There's only a middle part that's visible. Only draw that. That's it. This is how transparent objects look like transparent objects, when we don't give too much information. You can watch this again using the recording. So you don't have to complete this right now. Oh, Shivani, you're saying something? Your mic isn't working. Okay, sorry. Ah, very nice. Are there enough light tones? Could you share the image on the group? I think some places you need to do a little shading, like just edges need a little light tone also, softer. But could you just share it on the group, then I can comment. Okay, now the last bit is the shadow. All transparent objects have a very peculiar shadow. You have, I think in some class we've done this before. If we have a water droplet, because of the water droplet bulbing up, you will have the light shine out from the opposite end and then also shine out onto the surface. And then you have a shadow. It's the same thing that happens over here. You have a highlight because light has come through here and it is shining out of this section. Is this? And then you have a shadow that is, again, go with the lines, the angles. You have the transparent, empty part of the glass reflected, shadowed over here, and the filled part shadowed here. And you have some overlaps. So, first thing is just shade in a crescent form this entire section very lightly. In this space, you can, I think, use a blending stump if you have it. If you don't have it, just use a very light shadow to make this even, this shading even. with again a very light hand, change the orientation, change the angle that you are shading in, and that should fill in the spaces that are left blank. Now don't bother with blending too much. Just using that same light hand, start filling in the spaces that have the same midtones in the dark part of the shadow. And additional dark parts. Here you can keep changing the orientation once you have drawn the basic shape, because you know how far you have to go and you're not going to go beyond this curve. If you're holding the pencil far enough, you should get a very nice light line. You can move a little closer so that you can control the pressure and then increase the pressure a little bit and shade these sections in between. And here try to get an accurate shape without having to draw the shape out. So at this stage, if you are still getting lines in your shading, don't worry about that too much. Now comes the shadow part. And this is how you build in the soft shadows. Fuzz out the edges. It's still very sharp. So this is how the glass looks without me using the blending stump. And if I were to use the blending stump, I can also use it very discreetly in a few places, like just the cast shadow. And if I very lightly go over the entire shadow, many of those tones are going to blend and blur into each other. And at this point, if I feel I want to highlight, I bring in the eraser and I create a highlight. All right. Any questions? Do you want me to have a look at your work?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Let me see where my.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, looking nice.
Yeah, thanks. And I tried the little glass in the beginning.
So Elaine, the
This
problem
one is
again
too
is
dark.
too dark. Yes,
Yeah,
pressure. The light pressure, you need
Yeah.
to have more lightness in your hand. I think that's
Yeah.
the only thing.
And
And
another thing was that this glass I should not have gone according to the image where it is a pale gray altogether. I could have just drawn it without a background. You
you
know, if you
could
have a
have.
look at this, yeah, if you have a look at this image, it's like very gray, you know.
It
what
is
I mean.
very gray. And
So I should not have drawn the background.
I have an illustration of a gray glass, the one that Jasmine is attempting right now. That is
Right.
a gray backdrop. So
Okay.
let me just show you how that works.
Yes. Yes.
Here.
One sec, one sec.
Let me spotlight it for you.
Yeah, please.
So what I've done is just pencil shading, but holding the pencil really far away. This is
Yeah.
what I was telling you, that this takes a little while to be able to control. And sometimes in trying to get that light line, we go over and over and over so many times that we'll end up making it dark and it still remains uneven. And that's the more frustrating bit. So in your case, the glass that you have made, what I could recommend is making that shape. So I'll just briefly draw this.
Yeah.
It's a little less rotund at the bottom than it should be.
Yeah.
But I'll show you how it can be translated. So here, the details of this part are very important.
Hmm.
We have a line on top, slight line below, and then you have this shading. So first you finish the detailed shading of the dark parts.
Okay.
And then mark the highlights very lightly.
Okay.
And then with this light hand, you can literally just go over the whole glass.
Ah.
But look at how light it is.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you go
Yeah.
over everything except the highlights.
Highlights.
Everything. So in that, you will be making the darker parts even darker. Even
Right.
just slightly, they will still become darker. And
Yeah. Look gray. Yeah.
everything matches, yeah. So you don't treat the grayness of the
As a
glass
gray.
as a separate gray.
Yeah.
It's an overlay or an underlay of
The background.
that is what it is, yeah.
Yes. It's just the background showing through.
Correct. So
Mm.
it is ever present and it is
Yeah.
present in everything, including the shadows, because
Yeah.
those shadows are also in transparent.
Quite right. And here the highlights, even though they are looking very bright, actually have a very pale gray, you know, even in the highlights.
There
Of
is,
course,
yeah.
I wouldn't dare to put any color in it because then nothing would come. But yes, very
Yeah.
nice.
So the contrast between them is so low that there's
Yeah. And yet all the details of the bars of the window or the window panes, everything is you
Yeah.
can see.
That you can see and that you can draw also.
Yeah, even in the, if you blow up the glass, I know you're not supposed to, but there's a little window in the dark part too.
Yeah, over here.
Yes, there's a perfect little window.
Yeah.
Same window.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get it, no? Then I'll see everyone
Yeah,
else's
yeah,
pictures also.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay.
I,
Everyone else doing?
can I show mine?
Yes, Jasmine, go ahead.
So it's I've not finished the shading, and I did not realize the way you've done it. You know, the gray
Yeah.
background.
Right. But it's looking good. I like how it's going. Very nice.
So I saw yours. So in the center portion, what can I do now?
Center portion, there are more nuances in the gray. You've got broad strokes in. Now you can just make a few sections slightly darker, few sections, just erase them out and make them lighter.
Okay.
All right. Ashok, can I see yours? I think you were showing your picture.
Can see it?
Yes. Yes, looking good. There seems to be some glitch, so I can't see the details, but I can see the shape. I can see the tonal variation. That's looking good. If you can share it on the group, then I can comment better. So I just see that maybe some lines could have been finer, but that can be worked on. All right.
I need to use that
Yeah.
thin eraser for the
Yes.
highlight.
I think so. That will work. Yeah, Geeta, yours is looking good too. Very nice. Okay, so you've got the proportion. You've got the placement of many of the shades and shadows. I would say on proportion of the glass and placement of the lines, you're pretty much bang on. Shading will just take some time.
Yeah.
That's looking really nice. Nice
It
and
is.
light and
Yeah.
see all the
Cool. Janita, how about you? Ah, very nice. Looking good. Looking good. Okay, good.
once more, Janita, or put it on the group and then
Wait,
I can't.
let me do that. Let me pin it.
Yeah.
I'll put it on the group.
Nice.
Very nice.
Yes.
Shadow, I'm having difficulty. I have to practice.
Lighter hand for shadows. Okay, so now I've sent you all these extra pictures and you can practice. The process is the same. We have to figure out the shape, focus only on the different shadows, the tones, and sketch that. I will also be sharing a picture of a whiskey glass where there is a difference. There is a color change. If you can attempt it, great. If you want to just convert it into a black and white image, because it's got pieces of glass in it also, ice in it also, which also looks like glass. So it's like a triple whammy of transparent objects. You have a transparent glass, transparent whiskey with a color, and also ice.
So
Okay.
that we should use color pencils, or what you suggest? If
You can try using color pencils, you can use watercolor also, or if either of them seems a little daunting, just convert that image into a black and white image and then sketch it as a black and white image. That also works. All right, next week I'll be doing shiny objects. So we'll do some kind of brass, gold, silver, but some of it would be like utensils. I'll try and do a liquid, a drop of metal also. If there is something in the shiny materials that you'd like me to make, please share pictures or suggestions on the group. It could be objects that you've known or you've tried to do before and you haven't been able to do, whatever. Just share the images. It gives me some time to do some research and I can come up with solutions. Now another thing is next Tuesday is the 14th. So it's like around Diwali. How is everyone placed with that? Are you in town or are people traveling? Because I'm around. The class will be conducted so long as everyone else is also.
I'm there, yeah.
All right. Okay.
It's okay for me.
Okay, good. Okay, so I shall see you next week then.
Okay, thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, thank you. Happy Diwali to
Happy
everyone.
Happy
Diwali.
Diwali all.
Happy
Yeah.
Diwali.